Good evening and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. Welcome back, James and Johnny, to our Tuesday show, our week 8 of the good, the bad and the ugly. We have plenty to talk about this evening, but a bit of quick fire news to begin with. Obviously, next week is the trade deadline, November 5th, which I believe is a Tuesday. So obviously keep your eyes very much peeled on all social media platforms for all the some trades that may happen, including the one that happened literally 10 minutes ago, and that is wide receiver Diontae Johnson has been traded from the Carolina Panthers for a 5th round pick to the Baltimore Ravens. So that Carolina have received a 5th from Baltimore. Baltimore have got Diontae Johnson and a 6th round pick, so a pick swap, including the player, which is also another trade that's happened in the last few minutes. But also we had Josh Uche, the edge rusher from the New England Patriots. He got traded to the Kansas City Chiefs the other day as well. Lots happening today. It's official, but Anthony Richardson is going to be dropped against the Minnesota Vikings this weekend in favor of Joe Flacco. It's almost like we sort of talked about that the other day, if you didn't catch it already. So that has now come to fruition. Also reported today, Stephon Diggs, wide receiver for the Houston Texans, is set to now miss the rest of the season after tearing his ACL. Unfortunately, he's also going into free agency in 2025. A sort of similar, very, very similar situation to Chris Godwin at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So lots going on in the world of NFL. Obviously, it was a crazy weekend of results. We did the Monday show last night, but me and James did, covering for Adam and Sky, who are a bit under the weather. I'm also a little bit under the weather, so apologies if I let out the odd splutter here and there. But we should be okay. We'll be all right. James is feeling better. Johnny's doing all okay. We've got a great show to come. So make sure you carry on watching us and continue following us on social media platforms. So we'll get into the good of this evening. And that is looking towards the Los Angeles Rams, who have missed their 2 star wide receivers for a large portion of this season. However, they are both back in town. They obviously beat the Vikings in, if you remember, on Thursday night last week, 30-20. And James, it just showed really what an offense this Rams team can be when you've got all your ultimate players around. And I sort of sent a text in our WhatsApp group to the guys going, you know, this team is so totally different when they've got, and the same with Dolphins. It's so totally different when they've got like the actual players playing. And I know it's a really obvious statement, but like having Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp in this offense for the Rams, they just, the dynamic just completely changes, doesn't it?
Yeah, much more balanced. I mean, Stafford looked as comfortable as he's looked all year, even, you know, despite them still having guys missing on the line and stuff. But yeah, it's, you know, like you say, it is very obvious, but your best players make your team better. And it's just, and you know, I did wonder if the Vikings would still give them problems, but they didn't really look that uncomfortable. I know I think it was 14-14 at halftime, but the Rams seem fairly composed. I mean, the thing that having those 2 guys back is that they demand attention as soon as they're on the field. So that leaves spaces for other players. You know, you had Stafford, I think it was 25 of 34, 279 yards, 4 touchdowns, and he still had a pick. But, you know, you've had Kyron Williams, who rushed for 97, but also caught a touchdown pass. Demarcus Robinson caught 2 passes, caught 2 touchdown catches, sorry. And so, yeah, so just having those guys just takes attention away from others where it wasn't doing before. They felt very easy to cover beforehand, and the run game couldn't get going. Like I say, it just gave them a nice balance and a nice rhythm. And obviously, Stafford and Kupp have got much more familiarity than Stafford and Nacua have got, but they also, you know, obviously Nacua still lit it up last year. So yeah, really good to see. We'll keep that division really interesting. You know, I think they've still got a lot of in-division games left to play as well, so they've got a nice chance to push on a little bit more now. Yeah, I mean, McVay said, you know, there's an energy when they're on the field. You know, there's a spark that they give to the rest of the team, and that was evident on Thursday night. And you know, hopefully they can continue to stay healthy. If they can ease them back in rather than force them in on every down, then that'd be great. I'm not too sure of the Rams' upcoming schedule, what games they've got, but that hopefully, like I say, they don't need to force them in on every play, and can try and keep them for the rest of the season pretty healthy.
Well, they've got the Seahawks, the Dolphins, Patriots, Eagles, Saints, Bills, Niners, Jets, Cardinals, Seahawks again to finish out the season. So
it's
a bit of a tough
mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag of games there, but this was the first time they played together, Johnny, since week 1. Obviously, Kupp sprained his ankle in week 2, and Nacua, it was sort of rumoured he had a bit of a knee injury before the season started. It got aggravated in the first game. Didn't play ever since. Kupp didn't go on IR. He just remained out, much to the frustration of fantasy football players because they wanted that space for their players, including myself. So it's the first game they played together since the start of the season, where they went into overtime via the Lions, and them two were a big factor in that. And in this game, a big factor in Nacua: 7 receptions, 106 yards. Kupp 5 receptions, 51 yards, and a touchdown against a good Vikings team. I know they've sort of back-to-back losses now with the Lions and the Rams. But really, the rumours were that because the Rams think this division's tough and maybe they should change it up. And then you see these two players come in and you're just like, oh no, well, this team is competent. Like they have got Sean McVay, who's a great offensive mind as well. Like this team shouldn't be something to be scoffed at when it's got all their guys fit, including Kyron Williams when he's running back as well, who's a great young prospect.
100%, yeah, I completely agree with James's point. It's no cliche to say when you've got your best players available and playing, you're more likely to be successful. And obviously, looking back to Thursday night, I don't want to talk too much about the game because I think there's a lot more context around the Rams. Obviously, the Vikings had a short week. Teams traveling east on a Thursday night on a short week tend not to do as well. I saw a stat that the Vikings haven't won a road Thursday game since 1978. I might just have to go and double check that because it sounds ridiculous. But yeah, the Rams obviously. I went with those sort of stats in picking my pick, but I think we were justified in terms of how well they played, and obviously Puka was, I think, the standout between the two players. He's someone that obviously we saw him get so many receptions last year. He appears all over the offense. He's so electric, and yeah, I think the rumors of potentially Cooper Kupp leaving, even Matthew Stafford as well, obviously, coming towards the end of his career. The Rams are still 3-4. There's still a long way to go. But as long as they keep their players, and I think the game on Sunday against the Seahawks is where, that's a real divisional mega clash. Another team that are in a bit of a precarious position that we don't really know where to position them in our power rankings. The Seahawks obviously started brilliantly and have sort of gone down a little bit of the last few weeks, whereas the Rams revival with their new offensive players coming back, I can certainly see them going on a little bit of a run. I think the NFC is obviously really difficult. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. They are probably an outsider in terms of the teams that we expect to be in the playoffs, the likes of the Lions, you could say the 49ers, obviously they're back to winning ways. The Eagles are looking good. Teams like the Bears, obviously they lost on Sunday, but the Commanders as well. Teams, I think we can safely say that we're not positioning the Rams right at the top of our power rankings at the moment, but I think with their best players back and such a young team and with the great head coach, they're only going to get better after such a dismal start. So I'm all here for the Rams. I think I love Sean McVay. I think he's a great head coach and someone I think a lot of players around the league would love to play for. And as long as they can keep the likes of Kupp and Stafford, obviously, and other key players around. The offensive line have managed to find something with this seemingly for the last few years it's been not at full strength. So yeah, as long as they can keep the key personnel around, I think they'll be there or thereabouts. Particularly in a division which is still quite wide open. With the 49ers are obviously still the juggernaut in the West, but are in a little bit of a down year.
Yeah, James, what's your aspect of the Kupp thing? Because it has been heavily. I mean, the Stafford room, I feel like, has been an underlying thing, whereas the Kupp thing has been like all over social media. The Rams the teams are calling, especially my Pittsburgh Steelers apparently have called them a few times about Kupp. He's 31 years old. He's what has been this league 8 years now. Fantastic career. Drafted in 2017. 7,264 yards on his career, 53 touchdowns, been a juggernaut for the Rams, considering it's such a low draft pick. And really, when then you see him in this sort of game, yes, Nacua is clearly the future, but I think it takes the both of them. I think it does take the both of them for this to work. So surely now, after seeing them back together on the field now, if the Rams, they had maybe a slight doubt in their mind whether they would keep Kupp, surely this has sort of solidified them going, no, we need these two guys because we could still make the playoffs this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just looking at the division. You've got the Cardinals, 49ers, and Seahawks all 4-4, and the Rams at 3-4. So it is super, super wide open. You win that Seahawks game at the weekend, and you can flip things around. It does take them both to work. I think you're right, and I can't understand if you are Kupp when you've got that relationship with Stafford, a pretty good relationship with Puka Nacua as well. It seems like the guys all gel really well. Why you would want to jump ship now? Okay, maybe you only leave if you're going to go to a franchise that looks like it's right on the cusp, and you can maybe get yourself another ring in the next year or two. I don't know what teams would be willing to give up. Obviously, he's a top talent, but he is getting older, like you said, at 31. You would think that the Rams would want a decent draft pick for him still. You're not going to get him for a fifth or anything like that. It's going to be something pretty high. You're not just going to pull the rug from under the Rams. They're a pretty savvy organization. And I think you've got time to turn it around this year and make a bit of a run. So I would be surprised if it happened. But obviously, this is football, and expect the unexpected, if you like. But I just don't see, like, I'm not being, too derogatory toward the Steelers or anything, but I don't see that as a much more of a progressive move because of the division they're in. It's difficult. They're in a division at the moment that's still, as Johnny said, wide open. So why not see if you can just go on a little streak now? If you beat the Seahawks at the weekend, this will be the interesting thing. They play the Seahawks in probably 2 days before the deadline. How many reps he gets will give you an indication, in my mind, as to what they plan on doing with Kupp. If he plays the game, I would imagine that he's going to stay. If he's taking little reps here and there, there's a good chance that they are looking to shop him in and see what's about. But I don't know, it's a strange one. It's one of the stranger ones that I've heard. And I'd sort of, based on how they played the other day and keeping the NFC interesting, I hope he stays.
Yeah, I think you're right in that sort of, like, if it was a sideways move. I mean, it could be an organizational thing. It might not be a him thing. It's an organizational thing. But I think when these two are on the field together, they are, maybe one of the top wide receiver duos in the league. Like, you can't take that away from them by no means. Let's move to the bad of the weekend, and that is Tennessee Titans. They lost 52-14 against the Detroit Lions. Obviously, Mason Rudolph was playing in this game because of Will Levis's injury, his shoulder injury he got against the Bills. But even before that, it wasn't pretty. I mean, what's the bad is, what is the Titans' solution to this quarterback position going to be? Because at the minute, they're the number 2 pick in the draft at the minute. We're not going to talk sort of about their draft, but what can they do moving forward to try and salvage something from this season? Because it's been really bad. I mean, they've only beaten the Dolphins in week 4, which was 31-12, but that was a tourless win for them, Johnny, against the Dolphins. And it's really, really not pretty for Tennessee, considering, this team had Derrick Henry. They're a proverbial sort of playoff team most years. Strong their defense has been pretty decent this year as well, but they seem to not be able to get anything going on this offense at the minute.
Yeah, I think the scary thing about it is the complete lack of return in investment that the Titans have seen from, what was, if you look back at it, they spent so heavily on free agents and extending players, and obviously, Cindy Hopkins leave, Calvin Ridley, who was a big name, Tony Pollard, another big name. These players are now rumored to be on their way out because the Titans have not figured it out at the quarterback position and have a really poor offense. Their special teams, I was just reading before we came on how badly, obviously, they had we saw the Lions return some monster punt returns over the weekend. But even before then, I think the Titans were surrendering the most yards in terms of kickoff returns and punt returns. So there's a lot of problems around this team. That the defense has been relatively okay. It's, how poor we've seen, unfortunately, Will Levis and Rudolph playing in the interim. The defense has kept them in games, obviously, against the Colts and the Dolphins, obviously, with their own weaknesses. But yeah, this is a team that is, I think, as the head coach Callahan said at the weekend, he doesn't really know the identity of this team, and I think that is down to a lack of culture, perhaps, but from obviously losing someone like Mike Vrabel, a huge titan inside the Titans organization. I'm sure his departure has left a huge hole in terms of leadership and someone that players and personnel around the front office could rely on. I think there are an awful lot of problems for the Titans, and yeah, like you say, it screams like they're just waiting now for the season to finish, try and get as much return in investment as possible. I mean, obviously they got a draft pick, obviously albeit a low one for DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, the trade for Ernest Jones, in return for Jerome Baker, that's his name. And another sort of example that the Titans are looking to cash in. So I think we can expect Calvin Ridley and possibly another couple of names depart. These names have only probably just arrived in the building. They're probably going to be packing the bags very soon, I think, before next Thursday, because I don't see where the Titans are going on a little bit of a run or picking up wins. I just think it's an unfortunate season that they just haven't figured it out in the off season, and unfortunately with injuries or whatever, they can't figure it out in play as well.
Yeah, the full reset feels like it should maybe happen. But James, I mean, Will Levis, 699 yards, 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions for the season so far. And, they got rid of Ryan Tannehill. Everyone said who wasn't a good quarterback, and it was all Derrick Henry. And it was like, well, okay, we can't pay Derrick Henry. We don't want to pay Derrick Henry. We'll reset the quarterback position. We'll get cheaper. We'll spend our money elsewhere and we'll build. And that was the idea. And it's just completely fell flat, hasn't it? I mean, like I say, we've gone from Henry to Pollard. Pollard's not been great this year. They've gone from AJ Brown to drafting the kid that I can't even remember his name now, who's been absolutely terrible for them. And then bringing in DeAndre Hopkins. That didn't really work. Calvin Ridley, yeah, all right, he got over 100 yards in the first quarter against the Lions in this game, which was a massive record. But it's all empty calories when it doesn't mean anything, doesn't it? Like where's this franchise gone wrong, do you think?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? The grass isn't always greener in some situations. I'm just trying to think of the name you were trying to think of as well as Treylon Burks.
Treylon Burks, yeah,
there we go.
That's the guy.
3 minds. There we go. I don't know. Yeah, like I say, the grass isn't always greener, and from Callahan to Vrabel, from Tannehill to Levis to Rudolph to, like you say, trading a way of wide receivers and the spending big in free agency. It just feels like a lost organization. Like they don't really feel like they know what they're doing. And now all these names that they brought in over the last couple of years, they're looking at they're shopping these guys around the league. I mean, Calvin Ridley is going to be a difficult sell, I would think. I mean, he hasn't played particularly well. I was surprised when he got a big contract from the Titans, but then the Titans felt desperate, so maybe it wasn't a huge surprise. I mean, I just had a quick look at what picks they've got in the draft, and coming up, they've got a first, second, 2 4s, 2 5s, one of which could become a 4 if DeAndre Hopkins hits certain stats with the Chiefs, a 6 and a 7. But at this moment in time, I wouldn't be trusting that organization to spend those picks too wisely. I mean, Ryan Tannehill's still free agent. You go back begging, cap in hand, and just see if you can get any sort of competent play out, or just even bring him in as an experienced guy to try and cut some areas out from Will Levis. But I mean, he's never going to do that now, surely. They'll go back to Levis when he's fit, because you've got the rest of this year to try and figure out what he is. And if you can cut some of the mistakes out, it might well be that they give him another year and they trade out of that first and gain capital for the year afterwards, and then go again from there. That feels to me, if it goes that way, and if Levis does show improvement, like that would be the sensible thing to do. But then this is Tennessee, and sensibility hasn't always been the order of the day, unfortunately. And so, like you say, it's felt like a really sudden sort of fall from grace, because it didn't feel like too long ago they were making those deep runs into the playoffs and causing upsets with against bigger name brands, if you like. But when, like you say, you make wholesale changes without seemingly too much of a plan, it can't be that big of a shock when it doesn't all come off. I mean, look, it's a funny one, because obviously, we're all in a country where sports teams, threatened with relegation and stuff, and obviously that's not a factor here. So it's not like they're going to fade into obscurity. They're just going to be in just a sort of languid position at the bottom of the last of the 32 teams, almost, or one of the last. And so it is strange. I think there's something there with Levis. I think we've seen signs. I remember, was he to throw like 4 touchdowns to DeAndre Hopkins last year in like his first game, or something crazy? He showed really good signs, but this year the mistakes have just been so bad that it's negated anything good that he's done. But there is something there. He's big, he's strong, he's got a good arm, he can move. He just needs experience, it feels like. And so we'll see him back in sooner rather than later, I think, providing the injury clears. But I would expect more changes maybe behind the scenes before this season's out than maybe on the field. And I don't know if that feels like that would make, if you can get the right guys in, maybe solve some problems. But just a very strange organization, it feels at the moment. It's really hard to read on what they are and at any position. But you know, I don't know, you tank the rest of the season and just see what you can pick up and just go pretty much one and done with Levis. We've seen it done in the past. I don't think that would be fair to the guy, and I think you get an opportunity elsewhere. But yeah, it's a strange one. I don't like what's happened to them. I liked their brand of football before, pretty in your face, pretty hard, pretty just smash and grab kind of team, and now they feel like nothing in particular. There's no, you don't. It's very hard to see where any threat's going to come from, where they're going to put up points, apart from maybe field goals.
Yeah, I think they've got time in a way to sort of reset this. Like Jeffrey Simmons, the defensive end. He's very much rumored to be on the trade block as well. I definitely can see a few more of these players going before Tuesday rocks around, because it just feels to me like, it feels like a bit of a franchise and a massive reset. I agree, but they were exciting with that smash mouth football, but it's a very different organization now, different front office, different players on this team. And you referred to it earlier, James, about James or Johnny, I can't remember who referred to it, about the identity, about there's the character and the identity of this team, and what was a team with a ton of it, with a ton of identity and character, has now got none of it. And I don't know how hard that is for an organization to find that, I suppose. So they're going to have to dive deep and have a look at this and carry on trying to find and then figure out some answers. Let's talk about another team. You said fall from grace, which is a very interesting turn of phrase, because we're going to look at a team that has definitely fallen from grace, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals and their decline from that Super Bowl team in 2022. I mean, they lost that Super Bowl, James, 23-20 against the Rams. They then went into the AFC Championship in the next season and lost again 23-20 against the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think we all felt as an NFL fan base that this could be another dynasty on our hands here. Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, this defense was really good. Zach Taylor turned from this coach for only won 2 games to then getting the guy and getting the team, and suddenly it was becoming something. And again, a team with an identity and a character, I suppose. And since then, it's not been great. Last season they go 9-8. Now they're currently 3-5. They lose to the Eagles this weekend, 37-17. And it's been a rough season for them. The offense is looking okay, but this defense has really just crumbled away. I mean, what do you pinpoint are the factors that have seen this team go to the heights to what's seeming like a bit of the lows this year?
Yeah, massive capitulation defensively, and I think it stems weirdly from a bit of money. I mean, they knew big contracts were coming around for Jamar Chase, for Joe Burrow, and they waited and waited. And when you wait, you then end up paying the price of what over and above what the last guy was. And the longer you wait, the more that goes up, because more people jump the queue in front of you, and then you have to pay out more than you perhaps could have done if you'd have done this a year before. But and there was one eye on that, I think, when it started defensively with Jesse Bates when he left. He was second rounder from Wake Forest in 2018, and was looking like an incredible player for them, but ended up leaving in 2023 to sign a 4-year deal with the Falcons with $64 million, a price that the Bengals just weren't willing to meet. Like I say, probably with one eye on Chase and Burrow and possibly Higgins and whatever else, coming down the line. And he was a Pro Bowl player. He's arguably playing at an All-Pro level this year. And Lou Anarumo, the defensive coordinator for the Bengals, was saying Bates's versatility in defending players from receivers to tight ends and his talent at tracking the ball was some of the things that made him great. Now, they just haven't been able to replace that. They've spent premium picks on defenders in the last couple of years. They've tried to get younger there to save money elsewhere. I think Miles Murphy, defensive end in 2023, They took Dax Hill the year before. They also used 3 straight second-round picks on defenders: Cam Taylor-Britt in 2022, DJ Turner in 2023, and Chris Jenkins Jr. in 2024. I'd say Cam Taylor-Britt has probably looked the better of those picks and looks okay, but again, he's just not setting the world alight. And the numbers just show us, prior to Monday night, the Bengals were ranked 27th in the league in red zone efficiency and 29th in goal to go efficiency. That's, on the other side of the ball, 27th in the 27th ranked third down defense. Before that, in the seasons before, they kind of prided themselves on, even if they allowed teams to get down the field, they just made that goal line stand. And you might walk away with 3 points, but very rare, you weren't coming away with 7, whatever it took. And now it's just too easy to score on them. And so, Lou Anarumo's scheme, he just hasn't been able to utilize players in the same way that he would have hoped he could have done when he picked these guys. And maybe it's youth, maybe it's inexperience, maybe with a year more game time they will pick up, but some of these guys have been there for a couple of years now and still aren't doing it. Still questions around Zach Taylor, I think, in the issues with play calling, which have haunted them for the last couple of years. But it's definitely the defensive side of the ball for me that's been letting them down, and their inability to just get stops or create turnovers or just cause the chaos that they were causing teams a few years ago, that sort of halted this what looked to be an ascension, and now has got them playing at a very average level. That said, they'll still beat the Raiders this week, so doesn't matter.
It has been ugly scenes with this defense, Johnny, for our ugly section tonight. And as James referred to, I mean, since 2022 they've drafted 13 defensive players. They all don't seem to be progressing. It doesn't feel like, you said about the stats for third down efficiency. I was about to say deficiency, which is probably relevant as well with how they're playing. But 22nd in pass yards, 21st in passing touchdowns, 25th in rushing yards, 30th in rushing touchdowns. That all around the park here, Johnny, it's just looking uglier and uglier. And do you agree with James? They just don't seem to be. They moved off of Bates. It feels like it did hinge on that, and then they've just not been able to develop these young guys. Even though some of these young guys they've drafted on the defensive side of the ball have been really competent players in college. It just doesn't seem to have. Do you think it's an organization thing? But they're just not being able to. Maybe they don't have the right staff in there to be able to develop these young prospects, or is it more of a timing thing? Because, like James said, I know these guys that were drafted this last draft have not had much time, but since 2022, like I said, 13 players. That's a few starters in there by now.
Yeah, I completely think it's an organizational thing, not having the right personnel, the right staff in, not just on the defense, but all around the roster. I think I think Zach Taylor's really under pressure. And I think if, like, going back to James's point about money, if there was any other franchise, he would be well on the hot seat right now. I think, he's so insistent on keeping the play calling, and it seems to be really, acting as a deterrent for Josh Burrow. He's obviously, relying very heavily on his passing and his leadership. And the overall team, there has to be someone who can step up alongside. We saw against the Eagles that they weren't looking to the run game and trying to force it with Burrow. The fourth down situation in their own half, I think, was fairly exemplary towards the end of the game. This team was winning against the Eagles and had a real opportunity to go on and win the games, just like they've had, I think, throughout the season in games. And I think a lot of blame has to go to the head coach. We've got 2 units on both sides of the ball that are not playing anywhere near their potential. We know this team is maybe not yet a Super Bowl caliber team. Obviously, they got there a few years ago. They've lost a couple of players and have brought new young blood in that needs time to develop. But absolutely, they've got a fantastic quarterback. Great players around the team. They just have to have the right people around them. And I really think that the Bengals are missing a leader because they're relying so heavily on Joe Burrow. And I think that leadership issue is with the coaching staff, and it starts with Zach.
I'm sorry to interject, but they are 6th in passing yards and 5th in passing touchdowns. Do you just think that it's just pure talent of Burrow and Chase?
Yeah, because they're relying so heavily on Burrow and not looking elsewhere. Obviously, they gave up Joe Mixon, and we know how destructive he was, and someone who was able to churn out yards. Obviously, a huge part of that is an offensive line which is capable in the right play calling. It feels like Chase Brown and Zach Moss are present. Certainly in the game against the Eagles, they weren't able to do much. But I feel at times that the Bengals are trying to focus everything on, they're trying to look to Burrow to solve everything, because they're giving up so many points. Obviously, they're able to score points with Burrow, but they're just asking far too much of him. And obviously the defense is one of the worst in the NFL. But I do think that it's not just that side of the ball that we need to take a look at. I think there are problems all around the team. Not from a talent point of view. Obviously, that old cliche, talent is permanent, form is temporary. I think that comes from a variety of things, whether that be a lack of confidence in themselves and the organization to lead them forward. Obviously, the bad animosity around contracts in the off season, whether they're going to keep T. Higgins, obviously Jamar Chase's issue.
I was going to ask you that. Do you think that, because it feels like that has knocked on effect in a way?
I think it has a knock-on effect for a lot of franchises. The 49ers, I don't think, obviously they've lost their best player, but they are such a juggernaut that, I think, of all the positions, the running back position has been quite, dispensable for the 49ers. They've been able to replace him with Jordan Mason. We saw how good a game the young rookie had on Monday. So the 49ers haven't changed a whole lot, but yet we're sort of, I even said I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs, is one of my, really, really hot takes. And yeah, I think it's like the Bengals. I don't feel much has changed. I think a big hole has been left on the defensive line through DJ Reader, injuries. Sam Hubbard, I think, missed a lot of training camp. They've also got injuries up front in the trenches. So that obviously has a huge, impact in the team. But yeah, I think any sort of animosity, particularly with, their premium players holding out or, not wanting to come back. Look at the Jets, someone who had come into the building and hadn't even, got to know anyone. And they got so much attention. In Hassan Reddick for what? And I don't know. I'm not saying that was obviously played a huge part in their demise, but the negative headlines will always have an impact, I think, organizationally, because gets people talking, gets people wondering whether this is a franchise which is all in, and whether they can themselves, whether the players themselves can buy into an organization which is seemingly on the front line, on the front pages and on social media as being dysfunctional and not having everything together. So yeah, I certainly think that noise can be bad and detrimental, particularly for franchises with a lot of young players, which obviously the Bengals have. So I think there is a little bit of a culture issue, and I think it's a lack of leadership.
I have to admit, if they don't figure it out, it doesn't break my heart. I'm putting my Steelers cap on. It doesn't break my heart that much if they don't figure this out. But it is a shame that well, yeah, I know. Yeah, breaking news on that one. It's not. It's surprising to see a franchise like this, but it's been so successful in the last few years, come to this point. But I think both your points have been fantastic and really articulate with how the Bengals can move forward from this. So we shall wait and see what we may expect from them going forward. We are moving on to our hot and cold, hot seat, cold throne section. So we usually all bring one that we have not told each other about. However, I know James hasn't brought one this time, any of this time. So what I'm going to suggest, maybe, James, is I'm going to give my hot seat and cold throne. Johnny will give his, and you can say which one you think is your favourite of the week. I think that's quite a good one. So I'm going to start off this one because I've got two bangers. This week. So I think I'm going to start with this. So my hot seat is Zeke Elliott is dropped from the Cowboys, maybe even cut from the Cowboys, because 34 yards on 10 carries for the 49ers. They are a good defense, but he has been dreadful this season. The worst rushing team in the NFL. I don't know why. There's the whole thing about they should have got Derrick Henry and all this rubbish in the media. Well, it wasn't just getting Derrick Henry. They could have got someone not Ezekiel Elliott. Like, he is not the Zeke of what they had a few years ago with him and Dak. Put the jersey in like he did at Ohio State, and he was a bowling ball. He was jumping in the red jug and the Salvation Army thing, and it was all lights and fairy tales and wonder. He has been terrible. The Cowboys running game has been terrible. Let's cut bait. Let's try and get some of our younger guys in to maybe do something and to maybe get a bit of competitive. You know, what bigger competition is there than you could be the number one running back for the Dallas Cowboys? Like, come on. Like, you don't need to rely on Zeke Elliott. He's old. He's costing you money. Cut bait. Don't go to Dalvin Cook either. Look at some of your younger guys and see what you can do with them. Johnny, beat that hot seat.
Well, my hot seat, I actually wrote my prep this morning, and it's probably now turned into a bit of a take that's, I think, everyone's on everyone's mind. It is obviously Anthony Richardson. I defended him last week in terms of, I didn't think his tape is as bad as, the stat line. He needs time to develop. And then at the weekend, he comes out of the game, telling his coaches that he was tired and he couldn't play. He's obviously been benched today. Where does it go from here? I mean, he's obviously, just from the onset of Sunday, his character's now come into question alongside his play. The Colts, obviously, from a win now point of view, are in a decent position with Joe Flacco. He's not, and he's not going to have time to develop this season. It's a young year. Where does it go from here with the Indianapolis Colts and Anthony Richardson? I've no idea. Obviously that's quite a predictable hot take. Other things I think on my mind. I mean, obviously I mentioned Dennis Allen. I don't know how he's still got a job. But yeah, we'll go from there. We'll stick with Richardson.
Who sits on the throne? Who's the coolest of them all after the weekend for you?
I've got two here, and hear me
out.
Oh
no, you can't have two. Get off the fence.
All right, okay. I couldn't decide who. I'm going to go for. I was going to pick Ricky Pearsall because I think his story is great, and obviously looks a really good player in only the short amount of time we've seen him. But I'm going to go with Jared Mayo, the New England Patriots head coach. Obviously, he, the Patriots beat my Jets of the weekend, but I'm really happy for a young head coach in such a difficult position, overtaking possibly the greatest head coach of all time. There was rumours he could be fired if the Patriots lost to the Jets. His players have been criticised for being soft, and he churns out a great performance, obviously with the adversity of losing their starting quarterback. I think a lot of praise has to be heaped on Mayo and how he was able to respond to the challenge this weekend.
I only cheered because for a tiny minute, I was like, he's taken mine. I was like, I could see it leaning that way. Sitting on my cold throne with the ice crown is one Tyrone Tracy Jr., running back of the New York Giants. 20 carries, 145 yards and a touchdown via the Steelers. Yes, they lost, but the Steelers' run defense has been fantastic all season, and he puts that sort of stat line on the Steelers. The rookie fifth-round pick out of Purdue has cemented himself as RB1 for this Giants team. Saquon who?
That's a punchline.
Yeah, that's it. That's your headline right there.
Like, James? Just give me the crown already, man. Tyrone Tracy, cool throne. He was fantastic.
Yeah, and well, sorry, Johnny. It is. It's Freddie.
My face wasn't good enough. I should have.
Yeah. Honestly, you sold me at Zeke Elliott, to be fair. I thought that was a great shout.
Okay.
I just do not know what on earth the Cowboys were thinking. I mean, it's not like Ezekiel Elliott went away, got better, and the Cowboys went, we could do with that guy back, and then he became a free agent, and they were like, yeah, okay, that's fine, we'll take him. I don't know. I don't know what kind of voodoo he's got over Jerry Jones, or pictures, or emails, or whatever it is. But clearly he's got something, because they should not be there at all.
It's crazy as well. I think the amount of young running backs that in this year's draft, obviously there was a lot of talk around it not being a great draft in terms of running backs. The Cowboys missed on a lot, and people like Tracy are now coming up, storming and playing real good football. So they've only got themselves to blame.
That's it. I mean, way to shoot yourselves in the foot. I mean, it's almost like somebody needs to take the reins off Jerry Jones a little bit. But I mean, I don't know. Good luck with that. Yeah. Well played, Freddie. Unlucky, Johnny. I'm sorry, mate. I did like yours, and the Rick Pearsall's such a cool story. Great to see him. And who knows? Big question marks around the Colts. Big question marks around Anthony Richardson. And Freddie and I were just chatting beforehand and saying how if you bring him back into the lineup, which inevitably you will have to at some point, how do you rally behind a guy just, taps out, says he's tired, so young, should be full of energy and full of, get up and go, and your job as the O-line is to keep that guy safe, and then he just at some point decides, I've had enough. I mean, I'm pretty sure those guys are gassed every play. Nothing warms my heart more than when you see the big guy on the side chuffing on the on the air, and just think, good for you, big fella. You get yours. You've done a solid shift there. I don't know. It's such a strange one. He's young. It's a young mistake. It's a rookie mistake, obviously. And I do feel for him in a way, because I think obviously if he could turn back the clock, he'd take it back, and he'd not be so honest about it. But I kind of admire the honesty of it as well in a way. But just looked bad. Just a bad look all round. Yeah.
Speaking of bad looks, I'm tapping out, lads. Thank you, James. Thank you, Johnny, for joining me this evening. And thank you guys for watching as well. I really appreciate it. Make sure you go follow us on YouTube. Watch our episode or the clips, whatever you need are on YouTube. We've got plenty more content coming this week with the college show and the betting show as well. Make sure you follow us all on social media. Until then, thank you for watching, and we'll see you all again very soon.